Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
So let me ask you something. Do you keep a gun in your house? And if you do your kids know where it is? Is it locked up? Is it safe? Do they know the combination of the safe that you have where you keep it? Who all lives over there with you? What kind of pets do you have and are they friendly? Who else visits your house? Relatives, uncles, aunts, big brothers. Who are all the kids who live there and visit? Now, some of these might be none of your business questions, unless your kid is asking to go over to that house for a sleepover. And these are some really uncomfortable questions. And some people are really reluctant to ask them, and some people are really reluctant to answer. But we want to talk about this because all of us have had children who've gone to sleepovers, and some of them have not necessarily been successful or maybe safe as we'd like. I can tell you stories about Sarah going to a sleepover, and the mom said she was going to be there. Then she decided to go to the Cape for with her boyfriend, and the grandmother downstairs was left, and I knew nothing about it. And another one where she went and the mother went out with a boyfriend, didn't come back that night. So we went and got them that night. So, parents, before you say yes to a sleepover or a play date, how much do you think you can get away with asking? And how do we have those uncomfortable conversations? Sisters, I want to bring you right in here because we've all had those times where, maybe you might like the parents okay, but you don't know them well enough to have your kids sleep over or even have a day with them. Maybe there's somebody who might do drugs in the house, or you have somebody who they invite your kid over for a birthday party and you think it's a kid's birthday party, but they got alcohol there and folks who don't know how to hold their liquor. How do we do this? How do we do this? Because time is coming for play dates.
Mm.
This is a very interesting talk about play dates and sleepovers. I remember when we were kids, if something happened and mama found out about it, you weren't going over that person's house anymore. I can tell of an incident, and this came from me actually reporting kind of what happened. We were at our cousin's house, we were there for the day. Our aunt had some very unusual behaviors in which she was always giving her kids medicine where they were sick or not. And she included us in on these dosages of medicine. I just happened to say, oh, our auntie gave us some of this. And mama was like livid, and we were not allowed to go over there anymore. So, short of curtailing playing with certain people, spending time with certain people, how comfortable are you with asking those kinds of questions? Now, probably you would not think about asking those questions if you are close enough friends with these people that you feel like you know them. And so you don't ask those questions. But the truth is, you do need to find out what their household is going to be like. Is there really going to be protection? I will tell you right now from friends of mine who do have guns. One of my friends, and this was when her child was going through teenage craziness, he actually pulled her gun on her. This is when she decided, okay, time you go in the army because you ain't pulling a gun on me. And But the shocking thing was he knew where the gun was, and he knew where she kept her bullets because she did not keep them in the same place. And that was like a scary thing. Those kind of incidences can turn out to be tragic when someone's kid knows where the gun is. Something fascinating about having a pistol in your hand and aiming it at your friend, fooling around, and somebody's kid gets shot, injured, or killed. Another thing you need to be aware of is what kind of medicines are accessible to the children in the house.
Mhm.
People do not think about these things when they're having a sleepover. You're thinking, oh, the kids are just going to, go to the bathroom, come back, sit down, play a game, watch a movie. Don't have your medicine in the medicine cabinet. That is the first thing that I have known adults who are
That's what I was
nosy,
going to
who go
say.
in your bathroom and open up your medicine cabinet to see what you have. How much
And
more
yes,
curious is a child?
yes, exactly. And this is the thing. It's funny, Barbara, that you said that about our aunt doing that because, okay, our mother died last fall.
Mhm.
If you dug her up today, she would still be mad about
That's how angry she was about that. Yes. Yes, she was livid. Yeah.
after because this particular aunt used to give her kids milk of magnesia after they ate all the time, and these
Mhm.
kids both had stomach problems their whole lives, and this was why. And when Mama found out about that, she was angry. I'm not kidding. Mama probably took that grudge to her grave, as well she should have, because you don't give children medicine, and now you have to remember that a lot of kids have food allergies. Now we didn't grow up with a lot of people having food allergies, but don't give your kids something. Don't give other people's kids something if you're not sure, or if they tell you that they have a food allergy and you don't believe in food allergies, so you give them something with nuts in it anyway. Or there are a lot of parents who are just really not cognizant of the things
Yeah.
that are in their house. And Barbara, the thing you say about guns is true. Let me tell you, if you have a gun in your house, your child knows about it. They know where it is, they know where it's kept. And I don't care what you say, oh, they don't know about it. Your kids know everything about your house because they're listening all the time. And if they're not telling all your business, because they do, they will, as soon as they're out of your sight, let me show you where my dad keeps his gun, or where
Yeah.
my mom keeps his gun. The same
Mhm.
thing with drugs.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people use weed or other controlled substances, not just alcohol. Hey, that's on you. That's fine if you want to do that. Your kids know where you keep your stash. They know where you keep your porn stash. They know where you keep your alcohol. They know how to get into your cabinet. So you need to know, and you need to ask your friends, okay, what are some of the things that you do to make sure that this doesn't happen, and who's going to be supervising to make sure that they're not going into your bathroom and checking to see if you got some oxy or some Percocet, or some medicinal, or some gummies. You take
Anything.
those gummies, because your kids know. And a lot of times, and you're reading all this stuff about kids getting into fentanyl and this kind of stuff, and parents who have gotten their stash gotten into, and the kid dies. That's murder, right?
Yeah.
Or manslaughter, at least.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to jail. And the thing is that and the thing is that there are no do-overs when children are harmed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we have gotten so used to trusting people that we barely know sometimes. like
Yeah.
like when Sarah was little, I want to say this. She had, at her, I want to say it was her ninth birthday party, she had a sleepover. And we had a half sleepover for kids whose parents did not feel comfortable with them sleeping over. And I was fine with that. I says, go out, have yourself dinner, bring your kids in their pajamas. We'll have, I had a magician come over and do a show for them. We had pizza. I says, when time comes for the kids to go to bed, come back. You've had a night out for yourself. Come back and pick your kids up. Because some people say my kids aren't sleeping anywhere because
Mhm.
you don't know whose father, brother, uncle is there who may molest those kids. And we hate to start thinking, of everybody's a molester, but there are a lot of children and a lot of Black children who are molested at very young ages at places where they felt they were safe or their parents felt they were safe. So ask the questions. And as far as play dates, I want to say, try to do a play date outside. Try
Well,
to,
you know,
you don't always have to go to a house to have a play date. Have it
Right.
or go out in the yard or go to a park and meet that kind of stuff, especially if you don't know the parent. Because I've hosted play dates and I never even thought anything about it. I know I'm trustworthy, but there have been
And
play
that's the thing. Have them at your house because you know who you are.
know who I am, and they may not trust them. They may not trust me. But if you ask me, do I have a gun in my house, or do I have a dog that may not be safe around children, I will answer you because I know about the liabilities, and I'm going to treat your kid as carefully and safely as I'm treating my own.
Yeah.
But everybody
well,
isn't
I
like
didn't know that's true, and I didn't know until I was in my 50s that our mother did not want us going into people's homes because she feared that we would be molested. That
right.
was one of her major fears, and I didn't know that until I was a grown adult that was the thing. And she was particularly concerned with friends that had older brothers. So, like you said, things happen in people's families and you don't know about it. And things happen that children don't tell until later in life, and they're already emotionally. And so our mother was extremely protective about people who, us going into people's homes. She did not want that. She would stand at the door and watch us when we were playing outside, always supervising to make sure we stayed outside. And even our friends, you stay outside. And I understand now the concerns. Now, of course, when I was raising my daughter, there were, well, the only friends that she had were friends that I trusted. If I didn't trust the people, you're not going to be friends with these people. If these are the kind of people who I fear would have alcohol or guns or drugs in their house, you don't have any business being friends with them anyway, because that's a whole different level of values that we just didn't follow. So the
Right.
people that I trusted were people whose houses that I felt safe for her sleeping over. And I know what kind of lifestyle they had. We did have conversations about things that you do, and there was a specific, set of values that we all shared. But when she hosted some sleepovers a few times, and one of the families, it was two of the girls, they were vegan. So what their parents did was just pack their food rather than argue, well, we don't need this, we don't need that, and then me having to try to figure out what I could feed them. They brought their own food and little Tupperware, little stuff, and we were okay. And
You broke up a little bit, Naima.
that I think we mentioned. Uh, hmm, might
I
have to
think you're
close some.
frozen.
Yeah.
Another thing. Okay, now am I thought out yet? Okay. Another
Yeah,
thing.
fuzzy.
Okay, yeah, I'm closing some windows here and make sure I'm not drawing on my internet. Another thing that we talked about was what kind of movies uh
Yes.
what kind of movies are being watched. And not everybody is aware. I've been in family gatherings where there were children present, and what they were watching on television for me was highly inappropriate. It's stuff I would not watch, violence, all kind of explicit, everything that is not like G-rated, but you have small children watching, and they're just, and the adults are oblivious. Not every adult is aware that children should not see things at a certain age. They just aren't aware, and so they will have programs on with extreme violence or ex- explicit sex, and so, and like you said, you have people who have their stash of their porn magazines. Yes, the children do know where they are, and
They know where everything is in the
they know
house.
where everything is in the house. So if you have these things and you have people bringing their children to your house, then it's only fair that you supervise so that the things that children should not be getting into, they're not looking at and getting involved in those things. So you do have to have conversations with parents. If they get offended, oh well, maybe that's a sign your children shouldn't be over there. But you should be able to talk about it without people getting offended and being able to ask the questions, and then feeling comfortable that if somebody tells you they're going to be home, that they really are going to be home, and not that they just say, oh,
Yes,
all right, oh, grandma's downstairs watching. Because I mean, I raised Zakia, and we had a two
Too flat.
family home. Yeah, two flat home. But I know if the kid had friends over, there's no way I'm going to say, oh, well, grandma's downstairs. They'll be okay. No, because grandma's not going to be, upstairs supervising, making sure they're not watching the wrong kinds of things on TV or doing whatever, going through the medicine cabinets. I mean, you don't put that off on somebody else
that's
when
right.
parents are trusting you to be the supervisor for their children. And so these are things you do have to ask. And no, the older brother is not a substitute when you got a sleepover of girls. No. So
No.
so these are things you have to say, even if it's uncomfortable, even if people feel slightly offended that you would even ask. Well, yeah, I have to ask, because I don't want to hear 20 years later that your 17-year-old son that you left in charge while you went out to the grocery store molested my 9-year-old daughter. I don't want to find that out. So
because
yeah.
And don't
I'm
underestimate the
sorry.
power of asking questions of your own children. Oh, how was it? What did you guys
Yeah.
do? Blah, blah, blah. Because
Mm.
children are little tape recorders. They repeat a lot of things you don't want them repeating, but you might have some insight on different things you were not aware of simply by having a conversation with them, following up with what they were doing, what kind of games that they played, what was on the screen that they watched, what kind of books were they reading. Those kind of things give away a lot of information that you may not have been able to dig out of your neighbor or find out, exactly. They're being secretive about maybe some things that they know that you are not going to be approving of. And more and more, it is important to know your kids' friends' parents. If you're going to be having them doing things with them, you need to know them. You need to know enough about them that you don't have any compunction about asking those questions, and you feel good about your children spending time in their homes.
It's
Yeah.
interesting that you say that too, because a lot of times we don't, when our kids are little, we do tend to know the parents at least a little bit. You're
Mhm.
at the schoolyard, you're dropping them off, and the kids know everybody, even from preschool. I'd have kids that come up to me that I swear I've never seen before, and they'll say, Sarah, your mom's here. So little kids know who belongs to whom. So that's a good thing. But the other thing is, as your kids get older, you have less and less chance to get to know who the parents are. By the time they get to middle school, high school, there was one of Sarah's friends that I used to drop off, and it turns out, they're best friends now. They're even roommates now. But I used to drop her off because they were on cheerleaders together when they were in high school. And I used to, she lived in the neighborhood, so I would drop her either at her dad's house or at her grandmother's house. And one day he came out because he said, and he didn't speak English very well, but he says, I wanted to see who was bringing my daughter home. And that was exactly right. Here, you have your daughter getting in the car with someone. And yes, she was friends. What, I was her friend's mom, but he didn't know me from Adam. He couldn't have picked me out of a lineup. So it was good for him
Mm.
to know that. Now I know him now, and we see him, and Sarah knows him very well. But we have to do a lot of things, and remember to be that safe space for your kids. If your child is uncomfortable with something,
Yes.
come at them angry, because if you seem angry, they won't tell you things. And
Right.
Right.
you don't have secrets. Don't keep secrets from your parents like that, so that if something happens, because that is how children are groomed. And we don't want to say that every time that there's sexual molestation going on or drugs going on all over the place, but it's going on all over the place.
Yeah, sorry to say we live in that kind of
We
world.
live in this.
And even as teenagers, when, as you were saying, Cheryl, your kids get older, you don't really know the parents that well. I have had so many crazy stories from my young people when they were teenagers. Oh, yeah, we were at this person's house and a fight broke out. And it seemed to
Or
me like a
drinking.
lot of those things were staged so they could rob people, but or
Yeah.
sneak and get high and all this kind of stuff. And I would tell my kids, you know something, you probably don't need to even be over in that neighborhood, because number one, some of those people, they may be your friends at school, but they have notorious type of behavior. And when cops come in to bust somebody for drugs, they bust the whole house. Oh, I wasn't doing nothing. Too bad, you go into jail
Yeah,
with everybody else.
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. And our teenagers
Well, that,
uh, are more and more independent, let us say. So yes, there may be drinking, there may be them
mhm.
getting high. There was one time Sarah was spending the night. It was a bunch of kids, it was boys and girls, and they were spending the night. I said, fine. Well, the boys' older stepsister, half sister, whatever, came over and pulled out a joint. She called us. Can I come home? I'm not
Mm.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Turned around in my car, went and got her. And that was it. And that was the thing.
Well,
I
that,
was proud of her for doing that because she wasn't comfortable. Now, was there teenage drinking later on in their lives? Maybe. But she knew that if she ever got in trouble or she was ever uncomfortable, she knew that she could
Good
call,
call.
and it was more important for her to be safe than for me to be mad. Because being mad is
yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
I'm
You
gonna
can
get
get
over.
over that in a second.
I want you to be
Yeah.
safe. But the thing
Right.
is
And
that
that's the important thing, though. Yeah. That's the important thing, is to not make a habit out of getting angry so much that they don't tell you things that, oh, she'll be mad. Because you want them to feel comfortable telling you things, even though they know it's something that you don't like, but you're going to listen and not get angry at them. And then always praise them for telling you. Well, thank you for telling me. I appreciate you trusting me to tell me. Encourage that, because a lot of times our children won't say things if they're afraid we're going to get upset, or they'll get afraid, they're afraid they're going to get somebody else in trouble, that kind of thing. But they
part
do need to be able to be honest. Tell us.
part of grooming behavior is to tell a child, especially when they're young, if you
Don't
tell,
tell
you're going to
anybody.
get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get in trouble if you tell.
And we've said this in other shows. You don't have adult friends. Children do not have adult friends. I have never had a child as a friend. Even now, Sarah's friends are her friends, and you know, I'm her mom. That's it. They can
Mm.
call me mom, they can call me whatever, but they are not my friend. I am not their friend, and they're all adults.
Yeah.
So we are
Mhm.
friendlier, but you do not have 7, 8-year-olds as your friend. And
Yeah.
that, when
Yes.
and that's the thing. And so it's like, oh, all of a sudden you're hanging out with your mom's friend and they're taking, that's fine if they want to take you somewhere and they don't have kids, or and that I've done that. Had somebody from the church who wanted to take Sarah to a play, and she did, and it was fine. But you don't have friends where you're hanging out with, you have an adult and you're hanging out with the kids,
With children.
and they always have secrets, and they're always, looking to, get your kid alone, or anything like that, or sleepovers where, like, wait a minute, because we've seen some terrible stories of the father who was drugging the kids, and
Mhm.
molesting the children, and his daughter was there. So you have to be diligent and trust that sense. And that's not to say that everybody is a predator, but put the things in place. And the first thing that starts is the question. That's going back to asking those questions. And if they don't want to say, well, no, I don't want to talk about that I have guns, or that we drink, or any, if they don't, it says, you know what? Respectfully, I am not comfortable with my child being there. And if you want us to meet up at a park, or we can do a zoo, or we can do a museum, or we can do some kind of outing together, we can go to the sprinklers. That's fine with me. Somewhere outdoors, if it's nice. If it's a nasty day, we can go to the aquarium, because everybody goes when it's nasty for some reason. But
You don't want to be
Is what it
outside
is.
in the
or
rain.
the library for story time. But if you're not comfortable and they're not comfortable asking those questions, don't do it. I saw something really interesting on one of my thousands of websites, where a woman was talking about, she had Googled this woman. It might have been on a Slate parenting thing. I'm not sure. I don't want to call out Slate because it may not have been them. But they have a lot of good advice. I'll call them out for that. But on one of the advice columnists, this woman, she Googled the mother of one of the kids that her son was hanging out with. Turns out the woman had been in jail. She had drug problems and stuff like that. So when the woman came over, she didn't want her in the house, but she let the son come in. And she told the woman, and the woman kind of like left her child there. Well, personally, if I were the mother, I wouldn't have left my child there, because you don't trust me to come into
Sketchy.
the house, but it's like, I don't know you either. But it was interesting.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, but she left her child there, which kind of says something about the neglect, because if you're telling me I'm not good to come in and visit, but the whole thing was, this woman did not want to be friends with the other mother. And you don't
Mhm.
necessarily want to be friends with the other mother, but if you're not comfortable with them being in your house, maybe you shouldn't host their kid.
Yeah.
I would think so. And that's kind of another thing you have to think
Red
about.
flag.
When you you have to allow your children to pick their own friends. You can't pick their friends.
No.
But to what degree do you monitor whether or not that family is a reflection of the values that you hold? And maybe they are, maybe they're not. Like you talk about, drinking in the house. Do you have a family that might have drunken fights going on in the house? Because I've known people that had major family drama, even with guests over, even with children present. And like you said, children will tell everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, do you really want your child visiting families that are that dysfunctional, and you don't know if a domestic violence situation breaks out, somebody pulls out a weapon? You almost have to investigate the kind of people that they are, even though it's just your child's friend. But if they're going to be in the house, I mean, yeah, okay, you can play with this person all day outside, but if you're going to come into that person's house, in a way, I do understand how our mother was in terms of really being
Yeah.
overprotective. Once you go in someone's house, who sees what's happening? So you really do
Exactly.
have to monitor the kinds of people that you're entrusting your child with when it comes to visiting in the home with other adults who may or may not be safe themselves. You have to make some decisions.
And it's funny because, we're Black people. We will ask all the time, who all gonna be over there?
Yeah.
It matters. It matters. Who all gonna be over there?
Be over there.
That's right. Well, I know we've got to go, but I would say if there's a word of advice, just ask the questions, even if people might feel uncomfortable. Ask the questions. Do you have a gun? do what kind of things do you have in your medicine cabinet? Do children have access to those things they shouldn't? Do you have porn that children have access? Do they have access to your liquor cabinet? Who all gonna be over there? Who's supervising? Just ask. What kind of movies are you watching? What rated? Yeah, ask the things, and if the people give answers that you don't feel comfortable with, maybe like you say, Cheryl, they have a half sleepover. Okay, you can stay there for a while, and then I'll pick you up at a certain time.
Good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, thank you all for watching, and make sure you like our Facebook page, 3 Black Moms, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, 3 Black Moms. And until next week, I'm Naima.
I'm Cheryl.
I'm Barbara. We are 3 Black Moms. Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're 3 Black Moms.